All right, well, welcome to our very first episode of Leominster Area Nerds. Today, I've got a special friend here. His name is Jake. He knows everything there is to know about miniature painting. And today he's going to teach me how to paint miniatures myself, and hopefully you can learn along with me. So let's get started. Jake, how did you get into model painting?
I got started in model painting about a year and a half ago, maybe a little bit less than that. I had always been a fan of Warhammer 40,000, and being a kid, I didn't have the money to afford models and paints and miniatures because it's all bloody expensive. So once I, got a job, got older, decided, well, I'll give it a try. They had like a $30 model set with 3 models and a bunch of might and a brush, and I was like, might as well try it. Take the loss on it if I don't like it. A lot of fun, and I was really pleased with it. And I just kept going from then on, just really stuck with Warhammer, though I am hoping at some point to more branch out to things like Dungeons & Dragons models, other things, anything that suits my fancy. It's just a matter of when and how and why.
All right, so why don't you just show me exactly what we're doing today? We have come in prepared. We pre-primed the miniatures that Jake and I are going to be painting today. So why don't we just get into that? All right, so we're outside. We're about to perform one of the first steps of painting a figure, and that is priming. Jake has already assembled the figures, so they're ready to be primed. What priming does is allows the paint to stick to the figures a little bit better. So Jake's going to tell you a little bit more about that.
Okay, the first step of priming your models is making sure that your models are on some type of thing to hold on to, like a stick, a painting stick like I have. Could be a block of wood, maybe styrofoam. Doesn't really matter as long as you have something to hold on to. And then getting it to stick on to the whatever stick or something you have is poster putty, double-sided tape. Doesn't matter as long as it's on there and it's on good, not going to fall off. Then it's a matter of just shaking the rattle can up a good 2 minutes maybe, just make sure everything's all ready in there, and then just short controlled bursts all over the model. Make sure to stop, make sure there's no bare plastic anywhere that you can see, and then just give a nice coverage over everything, and then let it sit there for about 15 minutes to dry. I usually like to wait for 30 minutes or so, but then you should be all set and ready for painting.
So what does your average person need to get into model painting?
All they need is some models, time, patience, paint, and some brushes. It doesn't even matter what kind of paint. There's plenty of brands. There's the Citadel paints Games Workshop makes. There's the Army Painter company. There's also Vallejo, which is very popular. Several others that I can't remember off the top of my head. And plenty of companies make models, all from plastic to resin to metal, which is classic. And models range from anything from science fiction to fantasy, of course, with Dungeons & Dragons, to things I've seen, games of giant robots fighting giant monsters, zombies, the whole 9 yards. It's just a matter of what you think is cool and just start from there.
And where do you find this?
You can find them online usually. Games Workshop, of course, has their own website where they sell all their Warhammer things. Amazon's a good choice. Reaper is a very popular one for their absolutely dirt cheap models. And pretty much anywhere. eBay has a good selection of things you'd maybe want to look at that might be secondhand, which could be easy enough to strip if need be. But there's no shortage of models.
So fairly easy to get into.
It is for the most part. You don't necessarily have to go like deep into all the painting and whatnot. And there's even levels of painting quality, from tabletop quality to like professional tier, which I'm not. I am not a professional. But yeah.
I said he was a professional because I was just in awe at all the figures he showed us.
He's lying.
right, so now Jake's gonna show us a little bit about starting off painting our figures. So, Jake, show me how it's done.
Alrighty, it's time for the basics. First and foremost, you gotta shake your paint just to make sure everything's good in there, just to make sure all the paint is in a proper way. I don't know how that works. It might as well be magic. So first and foremost, we want to get our base colors done, which is usually the primary colors that you see on the model. Right now we're doing ultramarines because that's so ubiquitous for Warhammer as well as pretty much anything. So first you just need a little bit of paint, if it'll come off the thing. There we go. Just need a little bit of glob of paint. Need your brush. Take a little bit of paint, dip it in your water, and then mix the water into the paint to thin it down, and then check the consistency. There we go. And that's thinning your paint. That's the most absolutely important thing to do. Thin your paints. You don't want to go straight from the pots. Going straight from the pot is a death sentence for your models. And then from that, it's just a matter of putting your primary color where you need it.
What is it you're grabbing this paint from right now?
This is a wet palette, and wet palettes are important for the sheer fact that acrylic paint, which is typically the kind of paint you want to use, dries so fast. Like, I just put some paint on this paper plate, already dried pretty much. The wet palette keeps your paint wet, so it keeps consistent. So you can just go on there, take from it, and start putting paint on the models right from where you're going. One thing I do want to bring up that's important, say we're doing, right now blue is fine, and since we have primed the model black, an important thing to note is certain colors, especially much brighter colors, like white or yellow, is not good or not very easy at all to paint onto black. It's actually quite a pain, very infamously a pain. So you don't have to prime in black. There are primers in other colors. There's even primers in metallic colors. It's just a matter of what you want to build up to usually. A lot of people preference just priming in gray. Plenty of people like in black, mostly because if you miss an area or an area that's hard to paint in or reach to, it's going to be obscured by shadow since it's already black. But yeah, it's just a matter of making sure to work with the colors that you think will work with the primer color you have. Also, when it comes to primer, there isn't just one kind of primer. Like I said, there's plenty of different colors, but there's also, they come from different companies. Where Citadel has their own range of primers, there's, like I use this Chaos Black. Where there's plenty of companies like Krylon makes their own. I'm pretty sure Vallejo does. There's plenty of them. Quick Google search will get you where you need it to. They're pretty cheap enough on Amazon here and there.
I think I did pretty well on the base coat. Yours, of course, looks better than mine, but what do we do next?
Next is the next step, which is usually a lot more of the details. Right now, we're probably going to move on to the gold, which is will be on the eagle on his chest and probably the trim of his shoulder. So, one important thing to know about metallic paints is they're kind of the exception of the rule sometimes when it comes to thinning your paints, where if it's really easy to over thin your metallic paints. So oftentimes, since I have a wet palette, I just put a drop on and I just take from the drop, mostly because enough paint gets into the water of the wet palette and I'm able to draw from there easy enough.
because I do not have steady hands at all.
If you don't have steady hands, that's an important thing for people at home. The best thing you can do is try and put your hands together and try and brace against yourself, or oftentimes bring your hands down to the edge of the table and brace that way, just to keep your hands steady.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been trying to do.
Also, if you ever have excess paint on your brush, it's good to have something like around the paper plate I have, and just drawing out some of the paint. And a good way to make sure to have a good tip on your brush is to slowly drag it and twist. So eventually you can get a sharper point, so you can do more finer detail work.
I missed and got gold where I don't want it. So like, do you ever go back and paint over your mistakes, and then if you
of course,
mess up then paint over that? And
yeah.
Okay.
It's just a matter of,
Until you get it.
It's just a matter of cleaning up. Like, it takes like 2 seconds. Just take a little bit of blue, maybe a bit more than that, and just follow the edge. There we go. Sometimes, especially if it's a bright color like a metallic, like gold, you'll have to do a couple of coats to get that color to be more solid again. But most of the time, you can just clean it up. There we go. Okay, now that we've got the gold on, we've got everything else situated and good, everything's looking pretty all right. Now it's time to move on to the next color, which is silver. In this case, lead belcher. Yes, they all have weird names. And we're just going to be picking out all the metallic parts, like the metal of the gun, some of the exhaust ports on his power pack, as well as some other doodads here and there. So yeah, let's get started. And like always, shaking up the paint pot, and then getting some paint onto our palette.
Grab my small brush.
There we go.
These are teeny tiny.
Oh, I just realized I never talked about this. We're using pill bottles as to hold on to our minis. Now it's possible just to hold on to the mini by the base, but that's a pain in the butt. Don't do that, mostly because a lot of the time you're just gonna get paint all over your hands, and then you're gonna smudge the mini, everything's gonna go not great. So an easy thing to do is to take a pill bottle, some double-sided tape, similarly to what we did outside priming the models. Just stick some tack or poster putty tack, double-sided tape on a pill bottle, and then just hold it on like that. There are some you can buy proper paint handle things for models and miniatures and whatnot. They're not super expensive, but if you got these on hand, almost everybody does, might as well do this.
So we got the gold and silver out of the way, the little fine details. So now we're moving on to a couple other base colors.
Yep.
So I'm gonna add a little bit of black inside the kneecaps, or inside the back of the knee, and I think in the elbow.
Yes, there's
Imagine that being black.
Yeah, there's some not fabric, but I forget what it, kind of almost piping
Right.
around the joints, which are definitely black.
It's like what they use in cosplay to hide that it's a person.
Yeah.
So we happen to be painting Warhammer figures, just because that's what you enjoy, but that's not the only thing you can.
Oh no, you can use these for basically whatever you want. You can use these as pieces for other board games, especially Dungeons and Dragons, other tabletop games, maybe. I know Games Workshop has their Warhammer Age of Sigmar, which is their fantasy line, which is some of the most gorgeous fantasy miniatures you've ever seen. And those make just great D&D characters or enemies that you could use, and goodness knows you can get a lot of them. And especially converting miniatures, you can get something really unique to yourself, especially if you're making a Dungeons and Dragons character. You can slapdash some parts together and really make something really cool and unique.
The creativity and openness of D&D and the same aspects of this really complement each other.
They do, and like I had said, Warhammer 40,000 and just Warhammer in general, Games Workshop really does try and push the idea of making your own guys, your own army, and really personalizing it to yourself. And they like to use the term of forging the narrative, which I really like, in that I'm a big lore person when it comes to Warhammer, so I like getting into the idea of making my own guys and fitting them into the world. And it's really fun to have them literally physically there as a model that I could make. And maybe those for you who aren't so creatively inclined, at least not with writing and whatnot, they have a whole mess of different kinds of space marines, soldiers of all kinds that you can come up with. Like here we have the Ultramarines, but there are plenty of others with different shades and colors, like the Space Wolves, who are basically space Vikings, or the Salamanders, which are fiery dragon-themed space marines. There's a whole bunch of them. There's the Space Sharks. Like, they come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. And many tabletop miniature games usually have something like that to get you in if you're not into creating the things yourself. Are all done with painting. I use mostly everyone uses this. From everyone to newbies to professionals use this. It's the Master's Brush Cleaner and Preserver. You can find these on Amazon for wicked cheap. Everybody uses them. They do the job perfectly. I've had these brushes for basically a year with next to no problems from using this. And don't try and clean your brushes like you do in elementary school. They just make you just smash it against the sink. Does not work.
That's what I do.
I mean, it works, it just doesn't work well.